Electrical Heart Activity by Grace Liu, Jonathan Rojas, Kenneth Wright, and Tran Huynh.
The electrical activity of the heart is a network of specialized cardiac muscle cells that initiate and transmit electrical impulses responsible for each cardiac cycle. It's an important process that regulates our heartbeat and is a procedure that includes the work of several parts of the heart and affects multiple body systems.
Primary body systems involved. The conduction system of the heart works mainly with the circulatory system, as the heart is its key organ. The autonomic nervous system, to initiate the start of the cardiac cycle, as well as its separate branches, the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, which are responsible for the increase or decrease in heart rate.
The circulatory system includes the heart, which is the main organ of the system. It will send itself signals through its various parts, which include the SA node, AV node, AV bundle, right and left branches, and the Purkinje fibers. The various parts will send signals through it that will cause the heart to contract. The more simplified version of how the circulatory system works with the cardiac conduction system is first, the autonomic nervous system will trigger the SA node to initiate impulses which spread throughout the atria where it reaches the AV node. The AV node delays the impulse, and that allows the atria to finish pumping blood. After the delay, the impulse arrives in the AV bundle, where it travels through the left and right branches to the Purkinje fibers. The Purkinje fibers then spread the impulse to the ventricular muscle cells, beginning the ventricular contraction, which can also be called the contraction of the ventricles. Because the heart plays a key role in the circulatory system, it is the system that is most involved.
Nervous systems. Autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system controls the firing of the sinus node to trigger the start of the cardiac cycle by transmitting messages. Besides the autonomic nervous system, there are two other systems within it that are affected: the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system sends signals to the heart by releasing hormones, catecholamines, epinephrines, and norepinephrines that accelerate heart rate. This system is in effect when there is stress or the body requires increased cardiac output. As for the parasympathetic nervous system, it releases the hormone acetylcholine to slow down heart rate as well as end signals directed towards the heart. This system is active when the body is at rest. These two systems are important for not only respiration but also regulating cardiac contractility.
Besides the previously mentioned systems, the respiratory system is also affected because the heart and respiratory system works hand in hand to provide the body with oxygenated blood. A process described is first, the conduction system is in progress and the ventricles are filled with blood. The right ventricle will contract and send blood to the pulmonary semilunar valve, which leads to the pulmonary artery. Blood is then transferred to the lungs to receive oxygen. The respiratory system relies on the conduction system to provide the lungs with blood to oxygenate.
Anatomy involved. There are many parts of the heart involved in this process, all of which include the sinoatrial node, or the SA node, atrioventricular node, or the AV node, the atrioventricular bundle of His, the right and left branches of bundle of His, and the subendocardial Purkinje fibers. These parts work together to transfer signals throughout the heart that make it contract to fill the ventricles with blood. Purpose of anatomy. Sinoatrial node. The sinoatrial node, also known as the pacemaker of the heart, is a specialized clump of myocardial conducting cells located in the superior and posterior walls of the right atrium. Its purpose is to initiate sinus rhythm by generating electrical impulses that sets the rate of contraction for the heart.
atrioventricular node is also a clump of specialized myocardial conducting cells located in the inferior portion of the right atrium. After receiving the impulses from the SA node, the AV node slows down the electrical signals to give the ventricles time to receive blood from the atria.
Atrioventricular bundle of His. The atrioventricular bundle is a collection of heart muscle cells that is essentially an extension of the AV node that leads to the ventricles. Its purpose is to transmit electrical impulses from the atrioventricular node to the Purkinje fibers.
Right and left branches of bundle of His. The atrioventricular bundle is composed of two branches, right and left branch. The left branch is a set of two fibers, anterior and posterior, and its courses down the left side of the septum and supplies to the left ventricle. On the other hand, the right branch travels along the right side of the septum and supplies excitation impulses to the right ventricle.
Subendocardial Purkinje fibers. The Purkinje fibers are additional myocardial conductive fibers that spread the impulses from the atrioventricular bundle to the myocardial contractile cells in the ventricles. They are located in the inner ventricular walls of the heart, and its fast conduction rate allows for the impulses to reach all the ventricular muscle cells in 75 milliseconds. Here is a diagram of the anatomy of the heart and where all of it is located.
The purpose of the conduction system is to make the heart muscle contract. Without the electrical stimulus generated by this process, there would be no impulse to cause the heart to pump. The reason why this cardiac activity is so important is because our body requires blood to function, and the heart contracting is a key part in how blood gets transferred to all parts of the body.
How the process works. This is a general overview of what occurs during the cardiac conduction system, but we will go into a more in-depth explanation in the following slide.
The heart muscle is composed of tiny cells, and the heart's electrical system is what controls the timing of our heartbeat. By sending an electrical signal through these cells, there are two different cells in your heart that enable the signal to regulate our heartbeat. The first is the conducting cells. It carries the heart's electrical signal. The second is the muscle cells. These enable the heart's chambers to contract after being triggered by the impulse. The electrical signal will travel through a system of conducting cell pathways, stimulating your atria and ventricles to contract. Due to this, the signal is able to travel through these pathways because of a reaction that allows the cells to activate the one beside it. As each cell transmits the impulse, the entire heart is able to contract as a whole, resulting in a heartbeat.
Here is what specifically happens during the process.
Then the SA node initiates an impulse that rapidly spreads to the atria, making them contract. The AV node then picks up this electrical impulse and conducts it through the atrioventricular bundle, all the way to its branches where it arrives at the papillary muscles and also the walls of the ventricles. After the impulse reaches the papillary muscles, they contract before the ventricles to lighten the chordae tendineae, which then allows for the contraction of ventricular muscles.
Key points. The electrical activity of the heart is a network of specialized cardiac muscle cells that initiate and transmit electrical impulses responsible for each cardiac cycle. The primary body systems involved are the circulatory system, autonomic, sympathetic, and parasympathetic nervous systems. But the respiratory system is also affected. The key components that send the electrical impulses to the heart consist of the SA node, AV bundle, right and left branches, and the Purkinje fibers. The autonomic nervous system triggers the SA node to send an impulse that reaches the AV node, where it then arrives at the AV bundle to get transferred to the right and left branches, which travels to the Purkinje fibers that spread the impulse throughout the muscle cells, making the heart contract. This process is important because it keeps our heart beating and pumping blood throughout our whole body.
Here are our activities, which consist of a Kahoot and Jamboard, and works cited.